This is the Healthy Business Podcast, the show for ambitious business owners who want to grow and scale in a healthy way. I'm Sarah Cook, and I'll be sharing with you tips, inspiration, and proven methods from leading business experts, entrepreneurs, and health and wellness professionals to help you grow your business with more income and having more impact, but in a way that works for you. Because when you have clarity and strategy, you can achieve the results you want. Welcome back to the Healthy Business Podcast. I'm Sarah Cook, and in this episode, we are continuing our interview with the brilliant James Rodwell, who is an Olympic athlete. He is a world-class coach, and he's also my younger brother. So hopefully you have listened to the first part of this interview. If you haven't, go and listen to that first, as this one leads very much directly on from it. But we move into discussing the importance of your passions, your why, and the real inner drive, and the difference between that and the goals that you might want to achieve when it is looking at success from all areas of results, not just in business, but also in life. I can't wait for you to hear this rest of this interview. I have loved talking to James, sharing our joint experiences growing up and really leaning into what it means to be a world-class athlete and how we can take so many learnings from that when we are implementing those habits into our businesses and the success of those as well. So I hope you enjoy this. We are going to lead straight into the second part of this interview, where we are talking about guilt and how James manages that, and thinking about how he uses his my time to be able to be the best version of himself, before we then discuss the importance of passions and why, and your inner drive, and how you can use that to fuel all the success that you have. So listen in. It's an amazing second part of this episode, and I can't wait to hear what you think about it. So enjoy. One question I have got for you around that, though, is this feeling of guilt, because you were obviously away a lot and traveling a lot when you were playing rugby, and then to come back into that family situation, that family life, to still need your own time when your kids haven't seen you, your wife hasn't seen you, your family hasn't seen you, your friends haven't seen you. How do you still create that and juggle that feeling of guilt, which I know is something that comes up a lot when I have conversations with people?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough, like traveling and being away from the family, and I had to learn how to do that, because obviously the family came during my career. So
yes, yeah, I mean, you started playing, from school. We haven't really touched on your career path. We'll do that in a minute.
When I was starting, it was just me and Amy, and like, she had her life when I was away, and I was obviously traveling, doing something I absolutely loved, and then the kids came along, and it's that adaptability to understand like what's important. And I think with everything here, for me, it's linked about like what motivates you, like what is your driver to do what you're doing, like your why are you doing it? And for me, that did change over time, and it changed quite significantly, but it was always based around my family and making them proud. And whether that was mum and dad or you or Amy, or when the kids came along, it was a greater thing then. And actually that tweaked slightly. It was like, well, that was a massive driver for me once they came along, to say, well, can I still be playing for my country when they're old enough to understand and come and watch me?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Like, to keep pushing yourself to do the little things, like to have my eldest there on my last tournament, like, is incredible. Like, to bring them into the changing room. So all those experiences that they wouldn't have got if I had stopped earlier. And that's massive. And like, now I finished playing and went into coaching, and what I'm doing now, they still drive me to be the best I can be. Like, that is my deeper purpose, is to make them proud with what I'm doing. And I think having a really strong why is massive, because when you're feeling a bit down, you're going, well, hold on a minute, this isn't about me. I'm doing this for someone else or for other people. And the same with that guilt thing. Yeah, I've been away, but why have I been away? It's for a reason. Now, if I want to be really good with them when I come back, I've still got to make sure I have a little bit of space for me. Now, the argument is, yeah, you've had that for 3 weeks, but it's not, because you're away and you're doing something with such energy and purpose for that reason, as I just talked about, when you come back, yes, they're desperate to see you and you're desperate to see them. And that could be your partner or anyone really, or friends. But there's also the opportunity within your days when they're like to have some separation still, so that your energy is renewed all the time, because you have to remember, and it goes back to the perspective thing. You've just done something really high octane, high energy when you're away with business or sport, whatever it is. Coming back, they're bringing all the energy. So you've got to live off that for a little bit. And then when you get your moment to say, right now, I'd like to do this, or I'm going to do this so that we can do this later on. And like, if I, with the kids, if I use the example of playing football in the garden, if I'm absolutely shattered, I'm not going to be much fun for them in the garden. So then they have a really negative experience.
Yeah.
If I can renew my energies in my way, I know that when I go and play football with them, that they're going to have to work really hard to beat me.
I love that. The inner competitiveness. I think it's always there though, but I think it is that values piece. It's that why piece. We grew up where there's only 18 months between us, right? And we were competitive as growing up, and our children are growing up competitive with each other. And I love to see that. But I think it's that nurture piece around, why are you competitive? Like, let's make sure the competitiveness happens in the right space, and you being there as a parent and seeing that as well, helping them be competitive at the right times as well. Like, this isn't about, being competitive about how quickly you can eat, for example. This is about actually channeling that competitiveness in the right way. One question that I had that kind of links to this a little bit, is something that one of my listeners asked me to ask you, actually, was this idea around nurture versus nature, and also that talent versus luck piece. Because you talked about your why there initially, before children were around, before you had a family. The Olympics didn't exist for rugby sevens when you first started out. So what was the bigger goal here that kept you going, that sort of that why? And how did that kind of come from, that sort of nature nurture, luck versus talent piece? Because obviously you're very talented. You wouldn't get to where you are without some level of talent, but it doesn't come without all the hard work that we've spoken at length about.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this. The nature nurture side of things. Like, I wasn't great at rugby growing up. Like, I loved rugby. I loved all sports, and I still do. Did I have an ability when we were younger that I was going to play for England and finish with the records that I hold? No, of course I didn't. So, but did I have a skill set that could be molded in a way? Like, I don't know that back then. You'll have to ask people who coached me. What I do know, and what I'm trying to encourage with my family, is that giving them lots of different skill sets, whether it's sport or off field, will help them be better all-rounded people. Like, I didn't think I never once did I plan to be a professional rugby player.
Yeah,
which is crazy to think that now. Like, I went to university doing a business degree like you, and even at that point, I didn't think, it was never even on my radar.
Well, you didn't get selected for the university team initially, right?
I didn't get picked for the freshers team. I nearly quit rugby, and it's like, well, back then, why did I play rugby? Pure enjoyment. I loved the game. I loved running around. I loved being part of a team, and I loved the values that associated with a team sport. Why did I nearly quit? Because I didn't get to be doing the things. I wasn't having as much enjoyment because I wasn't playing. I was training, and I love training. I still do, but I wasn't getting the full enjoyment because I wasn't getting to play any matches. So it was at that point, it was find another way to do that. And obviously Dad was very supportive with this, and probably got a lot to thank him for with that. But convincing me to go and try a different rugby setting to get that enjoyment back. And it did. And I think that goes back to surrounding yourself with the right people. And actually, if something doesn't succeed, first off, there are other ways to do things. You don't have to just persist with the same way all the time. And my route into professional rugby was very different to a lot of people's. Like semi-pro rugby at Moseley, where I was coaching in primary schools and secondary schools gymnastics. Like that's not conducive to an international rugby player, but it taught me loads of things around developing people, understanding people, different settings, different cultures within school and settings and things. So, you know, all of those things have framed me to where I am today. Now, as I said, the why changed as it evolved. And I remember the first time I pulled an England shirt on with like England universities, and it was
it's a special feeling, right?
It was incredible, right? You know, it's something though, after the setbacks that I'd had by not getting selected or being in the B team at school, one of the big things that I took forward through my whole career was just take nothing for granted. Like you earn the opportunity by working hard. You don't earn it because you're in the right place at the right time. You've got to have some talent behind it, but you've also got to have a mindset that wants you to keep getting better and better. And like hard work does prevail in the end. Like, you know, who would you prefer to have in a team? Someone who's an absolute maverick who can't be trusted with their decisions, or someone who's going to steadily improve and get better and better and better because they want to get better and their inner drive is there? Yes, you want the maverick for a short period who might win a game for you, but you need to have a certain number of players or people that will consistently perform and get better. And that's probably the bracket I put myself in. Like, I was never going to light up the world with what I did. It was how I felt. But I knew there were certain things within the game of rugby and sevens especially that I could do better than anyone else in the world. But I kept practicing them. It wasn't something that I thought, well, I'm all right at that, so I'm going to do all the other things now. I'm going to try and do the things that get you noticed as like a flair player. They weren't important to me. It was actually making my strengths real super strengths and making them something that made it hard not to pick me. And that's kind of how my career and journey grew, really. And then with that understanding of the game, and the longer you're in it, the more experience you get, and you start to understand how the games develop and you see it. And that's why I ended up in coaching, I guess, because I had that eye for the detail around how the game's been played and how different players are performing and things like that. So I've digressed a little bit there, I think.
No, but I think it is important to think that actually, you know, when we think about whatever sport it is, when we think about an Olympic athlete, everyone assumes that the medal is the end goal. Whereas actually, and I talk a lot about this from a business perspective, passion, performance, profits, passion, performance, results. Like, you have to have that passion, you have to have that love, because when those curveballs come up, when those setbacks come up, if you don't love it, you're going to quit. If you don't want to find a different way around it, then you're going to end that. And that's okay if you don't love it enough. But I think when you've got that such strong reason for doing it inside you, you find a way to make it happen. And I think then when you start building on that around the performance piece, and, you know, I remember both of us, like when the weather's rubbish, like we both played winter sports, like outdoor temperatures are not conducive. They're not fun to go for runs or anything. You know, London marathons, just, you know, that's kind of a topical thing right now as we're recording this. People have to train for that during the winter months. There's a reason that people do that. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about before around the behind the scenes stuff, the having that motivation, having that drive, but that comes from your why. It comes from the passion for what you're doing. You know, the sport evolved a lot as you were playing. And I think there was that sort of wave of sort of growth as the sport grew, that you were, I don't want to say in the right place at the right time, but there was an element of that the Olympics came through at a time that you were at your kind of performance level as well, which kind of allowed you to tweak that why, maybe?
Yeah, well, no, I don't think the why changed. I think the Olympics came, it was announced an Olympic sport in 2010, I think it was, 2011. Yeah. I still 5-6 years to the Olympics. And sevens is obviously very attritional. It didn't change my why, it changed my goals.
Yeah.
It gave me, and that's very different. Like Like your whys, you're in a drive, you're in the motivation, and your goal is your dream, what you want to try and achieve.
Yeah.
If at the end of that journey I didn't make the Olympics, then would I have still enjoyed the journey? Of course I would. And I went with that mindset to the Olympics. And you talked about the medal not being the goal, and it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like the medal was the icing on the cake, right? And I went to the Olympic. The context of it is we had 10 weeks training together, of which I missed the first 2 because I was recovering.
Because you were still recovering from this injury, yeah.
And I missed the first tournament out of those 4 I talked about. So I was like up against it to go. The team that went to the Olympics had never played a match together, never played a tournament together. So how could we expect to do well?
Yeah.
Did we have the belief we could do well? Of course we did. We wanted to win gold. That wasn't that's what our drive day to day was, to have a gold medal mindset. Like everything we did was to try and win gold. But I had to be realistic that we'd never played together before.
Yeah.
We could lose every single game. How would I get enjoyment from the Olympics as someone who'd watched pretty much every moment of every Olympics growing up? To get the chance.
What inspired me most about sport as we were growing up was seeing athletes on the TV, right?
Exactly right. And even to this day, like I love watching sport. So to go to an Olympics and focus solely on the rugby would have been really stupid for me. And I don't think it would have given me or put me in the best mindset to perform. And I learned that the hard way, actually, at the Glasgow Commonwealths. So 2014, 2 years before, I was so desperate to win a Commonwealth medal. That's all everything I did was focused on that. And I got it wrong. And I made a massive error in the quarterfinal against Samoa, got yellow carded, and we lost 12-10. They scored a try while I was off the pitch. And from then on, I was like, this isn't about the rugby, it's the journey. Like I've now got a really bad experience of the whole Commonwealth Games because I mucked up at a pressure moment because all I could focus on was trying to win a medal.
Yeah.
So I went to the Olympics with the mindset, actually, the rugby's the rugby. I've worked so hard for so many years. I'll be good at that. That's not an issue. How do I make sure that regardless of the outcome, that I've had the most amazing Olympic experience that I could ever imagine? And that started from the moment I got selected, to make sure that every opportunity I got was to see and speak to as many different athletes as possible. And these are athletes that I've watched on telly, and we've watched on telly and gone, oh my God, they're amazing. I was
heroes of ours, right? We were just having this conversation beforehand.
Yeah, I was suddenly in an environment with them, in the same kit as them, in the same team as them. Like, I'm going to take this opportunity to have a conversation. And, having conversations with Andy Murray in the laundry queue, or Jess Ennis-Hill, after she'd just won her silver medal, and sort of cherishing moments that we'd both just won Olympic medals. These are Justin Rose, I'm obviously a massive golf fan, but sharing a gym with him, having conversations with him, every single moment was there. And I'm talking about these people because I still put them on pedestals because they're amazing athletes, and I don't always see myself as getting to that point. But when I reflect now, that journey's there, that can't be taken away from me. Now, having the silver medal is just the sort of product of all of that hard work and the journey that went with it. If I had not come back with a silver medal, would I be regretting things? No, of course not, because I literally took every moment and opportunity as I wanted to. And as I said, all that hard work then paid off, and it's a team sport. And we go back to that 2-horse race. Someone has to win, someone has to lose. That's the same with every single match on that journey. So yeah, it was, yes, of course, everyone wants to win the best medal, the best outcome in any situation, but it might not happen. So you've got to make sure that you do things as you want to do, and you're happy with that journey. And I certainly was to the Olympics, and it's something that I tried to pass on when we went to Tokyo. Obviously,
yes, because you shifted into coaching for the last Olympics.
So
how was that experience of just being on literally the other side, and not just from you were coaching, involved in coaching the men and the women, right? So again, it was a different shift from being at Olympics, but not as a player, and a totally different role.
Yeah, so I was sort of 90% with the women. I was there with match day with them, and then I was doing a bit of remote coaching with the men during their tournament, because the men's tournaments was the 3 days before the women's. So I was doing a little bit of video coaching with them during their tournament and helping them out. But yeah, being on the other side as a coach is, I mean, the Olympics is crazy, right? Because you are suddenly staying in an environment which is probably the least high performance you could ever imagine.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the, I think it was actually Delhi, the Commonwealth Games, wasn't it? Oh. It was the most extreme example, so slightly different to Olympics.
Well, it's not though. Like, the Commonwealth is just a slightly smaller version of the Olympics, less teams, less athletes in the village, but ultimately it's a multi-sport games, which is not set up for performance. So if we go to Rio, though, there's 10,000 athletes staying in a little village, like tower blocks with tiny bedrooms where my headboard and footboard of the bed were touching walls. Like, there was 2 of us in a room which had basically the space for 3 single beds in, and that was it.
And you're a tall guy, right? So it's not like the beds are made for that either.
And then you go, right, we're going to the food hall. It's open 24 hours a day. You can eat whatever you want, from healthy options to pizza to McDonald's. Like, you've got to be so disciplined with what you're doing. But then you add on like the extra physical exertion, just walking to and from the dining hall every day. The number of steps we were doing was 2-3 times more than I would do at home, just even if I didn't train that day.
Yeah.
There's so many parts to it that aren't there for performance, but it's the only way you can get it going. Only way you can get that many people in one place, and it works. But ultimately, the people that can focus on their process and what their little steps are will perform better. The distractions are unbelievable. The enormous amount of distractions, from like the chill out rooms, the games room, the media, the excitement, all the messages you're getting from home because people realize you're in Olympic Games. Like, it's phenomenal. So how do you then channel that energy to perform better? And that's what I tried to sort of pass on with my experiences from Rio to the girls for Tokyo.
Before we touch into that, 2 things that come up for me there is, it's not just about the final destination, it's about enjoying that journey. But as part of that journey has to be your own. Like, you've got to stay in your lane, you've got to stay focused, because those are the bits that are going to make the little differences, which might sound trivial, like the extra 2,000-3,000 steps a day might sound trivial to some people, but actually when you're doing that every single day in the run up to a high performance space, that has a huge impact. So just, I think enjoying the journey and also the kind of remaining focused on the task in hand is also really key.
It has to be your own journey, right? You can't copy someone else's, because it's the same with everything, like exercise, nutrition, diet plans, whatever it is, your business plan. It's got to be yours. You can't just take a blueprint from someone else and say, well, that'll work for me because it worked for you. Like, it doesn't, life doesn't work like that. You've got to find something that works for you and navigate it that suits you. Now, we talked about it earlier with family life and getting the work-life balance. Like, your life's going to be very different to someone who doesn't have kids, because they don't have that school drop-off. So if they want, they can start work an hour earlier and finish an hour earlier, or they could exercise in the morning, whereas you're doing breakfast and teeth cleaning and getting them dressed ready for school. And you've got to understand that part of your day is there. Like, you can't change that. So how do you make sure that your other bits fit into that effectively? And I think that's your journey has to be your own. And we talked about switching on and switching off earlier. Like, when the kids came along and I was still playing, like, there's no better way to switch off from sport than come home and have a cuddle with a newborn baby. Like, you're suddenly,
it's so different.
It doesn't matter what your day, how good or bad your day was. Like, all your mind is just on this little human being. So there's positives and negatives to it, but it has to fit your journey, and that's the key to all this.
Yeah. And so then, talking about that transition from being a player into a coach, or whatever career change that looks like, because, a lot of people come from corporate to set their own businesses up, or, like me, I've set up 3 different businesses, and that journey has evolved over time, and I've wanted to do different things. From moving from that space where you're in control of a certain amount of things to then being in control, or not in control of, but managing other people, coaching other people, holding space for other people is very, very different. How have you been able to transition that through into being able to support other people?
Yeah, I think probably one of the toughest years I had was the player coach year, when I was still trying to perform at international level, but also learn the traits and arts of coaching. And that was really challenging. And I talked about this with loads of people around, very similar to a business environment in a corporate world, or where you're in a team and you get promoted and suddenly you're managing them. Like suddenly you're managing your mates. And there's no easy way to look at this, going, well, they know me in a different light. Now I'm their boss. I think I know them as a mate and what they like. Now, that my big take and learning from that year was I didn't know them well enough to help them get better. And
because you'd been in your own personal journey.
Well, 100%, but also, what you see from an outside of someone is very different to what's driving them inside.
Yeah.
Not many people are very good at sharing or showing those traits to you. So I realized very quickly that I had to, and I used the term learn the learners. And I learned that quickly that year, that I just didn't know these guys well enough to coach them. Like, what's their motivation? What drives them? Where do they want to be in the end of the season, 6 months next year? Like, what areas do they really want to work on, or where do they see their strengths and weaknesses? I just didn't know these. I just saw them as teammates and mates, and I had a lot of fun on and off the pitch with them. But now I was in a different role and I had to learn something really quickly. So when I transitioned into coaching the women, that actually became even more important for me, to spend time building relationships and understanding them as people, understanding what their level of knowledge is quickly, so that I can then help them grow even quicker. And that's probably my biggest takeaway from the transition, is like, actually the relationships between people are so important to breed a successful culture and business. And whether you're talking about sport or business, it is business at the end of the day. Like, you're managing, head coaching the women, I'm managing a team of staff and players, internal, external stakeholders. There's no difference to managing a business there. Like, yes, it's a different office, but ultimately the decisions are very similar. The strategy is very similar. The only difference is it's like, it is the pinnacle of that environment. So you've got to make sure that everyone is on the same page and buying into that same thing. That doesn't change though at lower levels. You still need people to buy into the same vision, but the teams might be slightly smaller, or it might be a bit more set in an office environment. You might not have as much transition, or you don't have the selection criteria going in. All those added things that can derail people. So I've learned loads from the transition into coaching, and I loved coaching the women. I found them incredibly diligent with what they did. Their want to know why we were doing something was brilliant, because it challenged you as a person to know the detail really well. They just want to be better, right? The gratitude they had when you helped them improve or learn something new was amazing. And they're just a very fun group to work with, but knew how to work hard. And I think that's something where I talked about right at the beginning, about getting the right people in your environment, in your culture, who want to be better all the time, will help a business grow and succeed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been talking for ages and we could carry on talking probably for the rest of the day. There's two more things that I want to kind of sense check in with you before we close. So obviously you've been in this, and I don't want this to be a kind of a gender comparison piece, but what I find really fascinating about men who have achieved success and women who have achieved success, there are differences in a mindset, and there are different feelings that kind of come up, whether it's around guilt, whether it's around more wobbles or less confidence and that kind of thing. I'd love your take on this, because you've been at elite level in exactly the same sport for men and women and seeing it from both sides. And as I said, I don't want to get into a kind of a comparison too much. This isn't what it's about, but I would love to, because most of my listeners are women. What I really want to pull out of this is almost the kind of the watch outs. Like, if women are listening to this and thinking, okay, well, maybe there's a confidence dip, like, how do you get through that? What have you noticed from a sort of a habits perspective, let's call it that, rather than a mindset perspective, that has been different from men versus women?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing I found was the emotional side of working with women. And I don't mean this in any way derogatory way. I think men bottle up their emotions, and they come out in a very different way, usually hidden from anyone else, or frustrations come out in training and that side of it. Working with women, it's just evident all the time, their emotional connection with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that should actually be cherished, and
it's really powerful.
It's so powerful. Like, and that's when I talked about the empathy side of things. Like, that doesn't happen in the men's game. It's so cutthroat and almost like a harsh environment to be in, a harsh environment to breed success. Whereas in the women's environment, the empathy side, like, they care so much about each other. So it's so powerful. That the one bit that I challenged them to keep pushing each other on was to be competitive with each other. And I think that's something that I've noticed women will not always, sorry, that's probably harsh, but shy away from a little bit. Whereas the men's team, it was like competition. I'm going to beat you. Even if I'm not as good as you, I'm going to beat you. Whereas in rugby, the amount of times someone would make a tackle in training and say sorry afterwards. So I had to ban the word sorry in training to me and to girls, like, purely because, like, I want for them to get better, they've got to push each other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just becomes a nice environment. So we had a really empathetic culture and environment, and it was more apparent off the pitch. But on the pitch, when we crossed the line, we needed it to be, this is rugby. We are preparing for battle, for matches, and how much can we push each other? Now, yes, we still need to be conscious of how we interact and speak with each other, knowing that it could lead to an emotional response. But if they knew the intent and the reason behind it was the right intent,
yeah,
it becomes a lot easier to understand. So I think, yes, there's a massive difference in the emotional side of things with women, both in sport and business. But if you can channel that for the right way, I think is really powerful. And just understand it's there, right? Like, it's not a bad thing to be emotional. I think growing up, we probably didn't talk about our emotions enough, and I think that's changing a little bit now in the world. Like, and it's, the more you can understand your emotions, the more you can manage them and deal with them in the right circumstances. So, there was definitely when I started with them, a sorry culture, which I think almost limits you to push yourself.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's sort of trying to be more unapologetic, not just for who you are, but actually the success you want to achieve. I think you're right. I think there's definitely, and it's partly a British thing, it's definitely a female thing, but I think almost that sort of reason for wanting to succeed. Sometimes people feel like they need to apologize for wanting to be successful, wanting to do something different. And in sport, that's almost allowed. Like, of course you want to be successful. You want to play at the highest level. You want to win matches. That's okay. That's why you do it. But when it comes to business, there's almost this sort of, well, if I tell people how successful I am, they're going to judge me. If I tell people that I've won some new clients or I've got this level of income, then people are going to judge me. Like, how do they? And to me, there's no real difference. Like, it's your playing field. And, there's a nice little analogy throwing in there, but I think it is your playing field. And if we can create that level playing field, whether it's men, whether it's women, but also that, it goes back to everything we've been talking about, this sort of your passion for what you're doing, your why for what you're doing, and actually not being apologetic for wanting success in that will drive you. It'll help you stay intentional, it'll help you stay focused.
Yeah, so I think there's a bit there between arrogance and confidence.
Yeah.
Isn't there? So like it could be easy to get caught up with oversharing everything doing that's well, because you feel like you've got to prove yourself all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you don't get that with the male environment. You just, this is me. I've got this. I'm not bravado, but I've got this. This is me. You're going to see it. You're going to see me playing this way. I don't need to say how good I am at this or that, because I'm not. And don't get me wrong, I know how challenging women's sport is in terms of them fighting for everything just to be able to play the game, right? So there is almost a desire to keep showing that. Whereas I think, you shouldn't be apologetic for performing at your best. And I think that's the slight difference between being arrogant and confident with what you can. So, I mean, that's something. I mean, women in sport are still lacking in confidence to showcase how good they are.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you need to shout about it, but it's almost the analogy I would use would be do you talking on the pitch?
Yeah, the results speak for themselves, right?
Yeah, and performances, right? So if you go out and perform at your best, people will take notice. If you talk up a good game and then don't perform, or people are waiting for you to slip because you give it the big talk up.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the slight sort of difference, isn't there, between that? So, but yeah, it's really interesting. I mean,
there's probably a whole separate podcast we could do around that.
It is, right, because personality differences, like where does it come from? That's something that's definitely nurtured, in my opinion. Like from a young age, still in this country, people are stereotyping boys and girls with colours and what they're playing with, everything. So those personalities are formed way before the child has a chance to think about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even just literally our situation of, there were just the two of us, but then cousins, all male cousins. I was the only girl within 5 of us. And that totally shaped who I was and the games that we played, the sports that we went on and did, but also the differences and recognizing that as well. And I don't necessarily kind of want to go into that so much now, but I think it's there is that piece of nurture as well, as we kind of looping back into that sort of nature versus nurture. But I think actually whatever has happened, whatever background you've had is going to shape you. It's what you do with that allows you to then create the results that you do. We hear the rags to riches stories all the time, but I think we also recognize that actually people who are privileged, people who do get that amazing setup through childhood, there's still a lot of those that don't go on and succeed. So it's not like it's a kind of a golden ticket or whatever that might be. And I think it's you have to have that passion. It's sort of, in some ways, this is a bit of a summary of what we've been talking about. You have to have that passion. You've got to have that drive that comes from somewhere, but actually it's what you do with that then allows you to kind of move through.
Yeah, I was always interested with the girls coming through into the England setup and what their background was, because I think if we look at you, for example, this isn't
supposed to be turning it back on me, but we can do. I'm interested to hear this.
Obviously, three cousins and me, and you growing up, you had to be competitive. You had to fight for things to if you wanted to play any sports with us outside, you had to step up a little bit, because otherwise,
when there's 5 of you, there's always one that's left on the side, right? When it's a 4-player,
right? So, but what I'd look back at and the links between how similar that was to a lot of the women's players growing up, like a lot of them had older brothers, or they played in teams and just boys and them, so they had to fight for everything. And does that breed that competitiveness that allowed you to then go and play lacrosse for England, or does it allow that? Does it awaken something within your brain that gives you?
Yeah. And I think when someone told me I wasn't good enough, my PE teacher told me that I wasn't ever good enough to play for England, and I'm like, okay, let's go.
So sometimes, yeah, that it wakens up like part of the brain that has that. I mean, it can have obviously a negative side to it if it's not channeled in the right way, and
yeah,
lead to different routes. But I was just always fascinated how they got into rugby, the girls, and what gave them that competitive nature, because like playing rugby is very different to what the stereotypical young girl growing up at the moment is doing. And yeah, it's just always interested. I mean, the psychology side of things is amazing from a child point of view, and yeah,
it's a huge one, isn't it? What's been your highlight of your career to date? let's add the to date in, because even though you're not playing, you're not, you've kind of transitioned from that now. But what's the highlight of your career to date?
I mean, I don't really like to look at it as a highlight, because I like to just think of all the memories that I've taken from my journey. So I don't think I can give you one specific highlight, like top.
In some ways, I love that you can't, because it goes back to everything that we've spoken about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, so some definite like big memories for me are like Dad presenting my 50th jersey in Hong Kong. As you know, that was a surprise moment, and that was pretty special. Obviously, the Olympic journey was amazing. But and then so, I mean, I'm probably giving you top 3 here, but like, no, I can't give you top 3. Head coaching the women at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, like, where I went to university and lived for a decent part of my life, like to go back there and sort of lead a team into
that's a full circle moment, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. But the full circle bit is actually reminding myself of that phone call when I got my first England call up for the Sevens, and that to me feels like yesterday still. And like, there's so many memories I've got associated with playing and coaching, that I don't want to give you a one. There are probably lots of memories that I've got which mean more to me than they do to anyone else anyway. So it's I always find that question really difficult, because it's ultimately they're my memories. I don't need to share them, like,
and they mean something to you, and they're not going to mean other things. And I think that's really important as well. That, I mean, honestly, it goes back to literally everything we've been talking about. Like, it's a personal journey. The personal journey to success is completely unique. Your version of success is going to be unique. And it isn't about that gold medal. It isn't about being that elite athlete. It's about enjoying the journey. It's about creating those memories, creating the different experiences that you have done, whether that's sport, whether that's business. And, obviously I've seen kind of the other side of your journey as well, and kind of lived and breathed that with you through, right from the early days, from school days. And it's been amazing to see you get to the levels and achieve the accolades that you have done, and see your name in the Guinness World Record book. And, and it's something to be hugely proud of, which I am. But I think also there's a human behind this. And, at the end of the day, you are my brother. And I know we have kind of really down to day, like, basic conversations, that when it comes to this perception of an athlete, you are actually just a normal human being. And I think that's also really important, that it's your personal journey. And however much people see you on TV, or, you sing your heroes at the Olympic Games, they are normal people, and they're going about their daily lives to achieve their best version of themselves. And I think there's something huge that we can all take from that this is about your personal journey. This is about your personal version of success. And it's going to be different for all of us.
100%. And I think you take your successes from you, not like my rugby career. What I did on the pitch doesn't define me. Like, who I am as a person defines me. And I think that's what I'll always look back to. Other people will look at it going, oh, this was amazing. And I'll be like, yeah, that's just me. Like, I'm not. And it goes back to that arrogance versus confidence piece, isn't it? Like, I was confident in my ability of what I could do on the pitch, but I'm not someone who shouts about it all the time. Like, I think if you walk past me in the street, maybe not you, other people, that they wouldn't necessarily think, oh, well, they definitely wouldn't, that I'd been to an Olympics both as a player and a coach, and I'd done all the things, I'd competed in all the events that and medaled at all the events that I tried at. So yeah, I think it's a huge bit, and I think that's, if anyone can take anything from this, your success is built on you, no one else. Like, and if you want the success, you define what that success looks like, and you navigate the journey and create the path that won't be easy or straight lines, but you create that path to the success that you want. And I think as soon as you start to compare yourself to other people and what they're doing, of course you're going to have a negative experience, because all the time people are doing different things to you. And the power of social media is cruel in as many ways as it is good, because all you're doing is watching other people's successes, but that's their success that they're being overconfident about or arrogant. Whereas actually the best memories and success from your journey are the ones that you've got in your head.
Yeah. I feel like that's a really lovely way to end the conversation, even though I could chat to you about this for a huge amount of time. I would actually, if you're listening to this, I would love for you to leave us some feedback, and what your kind of biggest golden takeaways are, your nuggets are from this, because for me, there's been so many, and I know you really, really well. And I think there's just relating that sport back to business, relating the journey, the success. There's so many things in there. Please do leave us a piece of feedback on this and let us know your biggest takeaways, and share this as well, because I think there's so much value in this conversation that will support people, whether they're in that sporting journey, whether they're in that business journey, wherever they are in that journey. And coupled to that then, James, where can people connect with you if they wanted to find out a little bit more about you?
Yeah, I guess social media is the easiest way, but obviously stepping away from England at Christmas, I've spent a bit of time just repurposing myself and what I want to do, and figuring out what the next steps are. And I think for me, I've done a little bit of work at our old school, and doing a little bit of consultancy with Japan Rugby, which has been amazing. But yeah, if anyone wants more information about my journey, then obviously they can go through you or contact me directly. Like, I'm pretty relaxed and easy to
LinkedIn's probably the best place to find you, isn't it? James Rodwell on LinkedIn.
Probably the best place, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, I've loved our conversation. Looking forward to catching up with you outside of work very soon. But yeah, I hope you have enjoyed listening to the Healthy Business Podcast episode today. I will be back next week with a solo episode. But please do leave us some feedback for this one, your golden takeaways, and share it far and wide, because I think this conversation, as I said, is super valuable for wherever you're at within your journey. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Business Podcast. To get your free checklist with 1-minute hacks to accelerate your business and find out more about our community, head to my website, sarahcookmarketing.com/healthy business.